This episode of the only podcast about movies was recorded a little differently. We had the distinct honor and pleasure of having a very special guest reviewer start us off this episode. Sadly, he only had 2 minutes between lunch and nap time. So we're going to let him start us off, and we'll be back right after that. Enjoy the show.
I need to just put on my headphones.
Okay.
Everyone, be quiet.
Why?
Because it's getting ready to start.
What are we getting ready to start?
The podcast.
The podcast.
What's up, Internet? The name of the movie is Toy Story 4.
And did you like it?
Yes.
Okay, who was in the movie?
Buzz Lightyear,
Okay. And
Woody, Forky,
what did Forky say?
the things that are in the house were rubbish.
Oh, rubbish or trash.
Trash.
Yeah.
Trash.
Okay, what part did you like?
I liked it. The Buzz Lightyear part.
What did Buzz Lightyear do?
He flew and flew and flew and flew. And now they stopped flying.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, and then did he save Woody?
No.
He didn't. What happened to Woody in the movie?
They walked to the car.
Yeah?
Because Fork went out of the car and he was walking to a rubbish bin.
Yeah?
Because he was rubbish.
Really?
Because he was made out of rubbish.
Oh. And what happened to Forky at the end of the movie?
What?
What happened to Forky at the end?
Why?
Well, what happened to Fork at the end?
I don't know.
What happened to Woody at the end?
I don't know.
What happened to Buzz at the end?
I don't know.
Was there any parts that made you scared? I remember you getting scared during the movie.
When?
When there was like those puppets that came out that were like a bit scary and they jumped out?
They only scare people away.
Oh.
People that they haven't met before.
Oh.
They've met Buzz Lightyear fit.
What about the little girl Bonnie? Did you like Bonnie?
No.
Why?
She's bad. She threw everyone in the garbage.
She threw everyone in the garbage?
Yeah.
I don't remember that happening.
Whoa. I don't know what was in his sippy cup, my friend. That did not happen in the film.
Yeah, look, sometimes facts get a little mixed up for a 3-year-old. So look, thank you to my son for being willing to come in. He stepped away from the mic for a second now.
He actually, that was adorable and amazing, and it's so awesome to see these films that is honestly developed for children, has stuff for adults as well. But this is I mean that was so fucking cool.
But we should reset,
What?
I think, and we should take. Look, maybe in the future this could become a little feature that we'll put out like little individual episodes from
Just
tiny reviewers. It's kind of like the Fraggle Rock of the Muppet world.
Right,
like,
sure. Well, I guess you know what? Here, I'll do the reset. Speaking of tiny viewers, this is my quote is actually from the tiniest character in this film, and that is, "You remember my thing with He-Man? I don't like to talk about it. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And yes, we Canada. My name is Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies with our intro a little bit later than usual for specifically the film Toy Story 4.
Yes, I'm very excited about this one. Well, not just because I got to talk to my son about it.
Not just because you induced child labor for podcasting.
Oh man, I hope we get some of that sweet podcasting money for this. But I got to take my son to the movies.
You did. I'm sorry I couldn't come.
No, and he, because he's only been to 2 movies so far, and Toy Story is one of them.
Did they have like a playing of the original or Toy Story?
We watched the original at home.
I see.
But the other movie that he's seen at the movie theater was My Neighbor Totoro.
Oh, okay, cool.
So he's only been to the movie theaters twice, and he loves it because he gets to basically down a whole bag of popcorn, which is a treat that he normally doesn't get. And the hilarious thing is, first off, I went to see this in RPX, which is just
I did too.
Unnecessary if you're going to take a toddler to the movie because they don't care about the quality. But even more so, my son is too little. You know how you need to put some pressure on the seats so that they fall down?
Oh yeah, was it springing up?
Yeah, he couldn't. I mean, he couldn't. He didn't. He's not big enough to like push the seat down.
So were his legs like up?
Yeah. Well, the whole seat was basically up, so he sat on my lap the entire
okay.
movie, which was just nice, like it was just very cute. Because the other thing is that every time he got scared, like he tensed up on me, and it was just fun to sit and just have this moment that. Honestly, it was crazy because we were watching something that I watched as a kid and have watched growing up, and now I'm watching it with my son. So it's kind of like felt like I got teared up, not necessarily from moments in the movie,
sure,
but just the fact that I was kind of like passing this tradition down with my son, which was just it was really like before we even get into whatever we think about the movie, that's really cool.
That's how Randy Newman gets you.
Oh my god! Okay, so if I rewatched the first one,
sure,
and the one thing that doesn't hold up, in my opinion, is Randy Newman.
Really?
Yeah. It's just because I think Family Guy parodied this as well, which is the idea that he just sings a song about what's happening on screen. So it'd be like Matt and Shahir sitting at a table recording my podcast. Do 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 do.
That's Randy. Wow, I didn't know you were here.
I know.
No, of course he does. I mean, there's a song in this one about being thrown away.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's
but they kind of dropped that in the second and third movie a little bit. So it was just funny to go back because they do that 2 or 3 times in the original movie, and it was the one thing that I was like, I guess because there's been a parody of it at this point, that I was kind of like, oh yeah, that's a thing.
I don't know.
Anyway, Toy Story 4. Very excited to be doing this. Very excited to be doing our first Pixar movie.
No.
Yeah, I think it is. It's the first Pixar movie we've done on this podcast. We are pretty beholden to the Disney empire. This is one facet of it we haven't actually covered. We didn't do The Incredibles 2.
I hope that our current overlords are thankful and deem us worthy to discuss this other aspect of their filmography.
I don't think our overlords notice us. We are akin to our overlords as A Bug's Life would be, which is to say we're entirely insignificant and invisible, probably.
I mean, we're punching up hard. I do like. We were talking with Jonathan Blade on Twitter, and I've loved that, like, we get, not with this particular film, but, like, we talk about punching down, like, whether or not, and my whole thing is we can't punch down, we can only punch up. Is punching up, like, even a term before we were talking about? I hope we coined it.
No, I think you know where I know it from is from Comedy Theory.
Oh,
and in Comedy Theory, they always say, I'm not a comedian. I just like reading books about comics, and they always say comedy fails when you punch down. You should always be speaking. You should always be making fun of those more powerful than you.
Yeah, fine, okay. We didn't come up with it, but I just like the term.
Speaking of the Blade, if you want to write us in and communicate with us as the Blade usually does, and we're always excited to have his commentary, you can do so at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at onlymoviepod. Matt, I wasn't there last week. I was incognito mode, but you guys reviewed Booksmart.
We did.
Which I'm really bummed about because I want to see it. And I haven't listened to, I listened to just, the first part. I always do like a little quality control check, but I didn't listen to the review because I haven't seen the film. Just give me your 1 minute take, or your less than 1 minute take. Your 10-second take.
I dug the shit out of it. What I really liked about Nick, Kristen, and Jamie being on the show is it felt like there was a plethora of people, like, of different opinions about it. Jamie in particular wasn't too sold on the film.
Okay.
And some of her points knocked my rating, my internal rating, down a little bit. But I mean, initially, it was great. It was so much fun. I think it had, I mean, you can go back and listen to the episode, of course, but you should, of course, see it. You should also, I mean, I don't even know, is it still in theaters?
I really want to see it. In fact, while I was in LA, I had like kind of a small window to go to the movies, and it was the one thing that was playing, but in the end, some work kind of took over my life. So I'm hoping to catch up with Booksmart. I've seen it, actually. There's we're halfway through the year, and there's a few top 10 of 2019 so far, and it has appeared fairly highly. So I am I will be misspoke to not watch it at this point.
Here's what I want you to do when you see it. I want you to find the character that you, not that you connect with the best, but that you enjoyed the most when they're on screen. And I want you to remember the name, and then I want you to come back and tell me, because I want to see if I'm correct.
Okay, I'll give it a shot. But Jacob emailed us in about your Booksmart review.
What?
I'm not going to read this out. Why don't you take this, because I don't know what he's talking about.
All right. Jacob says, Booksmart is the type of movie that had me worried from the very start. Sometimes comedies can hit me just a bit too sketchy and crass. And the introduction of Molly with the F Them audio inspiration track that's also in the trailer in her room had me mentally preparing for the worst. But before I could tell how we got there, I was watching two friends in the midst of their daily routine, dancing like goofs to no music, preparing for their last ride to high school together. And I was transported directly to the feeling those characters were having in that moment. I understand that some of the complaints about writing and familiarity of the plot that several of the co-hosts brought up, but for me, these were dwarfed by the creativity in filming that was propelling our epically lovable characters forward. Bump that rating back up to 1. We did 1 being the best, 5 being the worst. Thank you, Jacob, for writing in. I don't think I can bump it exactly back to a 1.
So wait, I haven't listened.
I said, I'm sorry, 1 out of 5, 1 being the best, 5 being the worst. I said 1 initially. And then amongst the conversation, there were a few things that Jamie in particular brought up, and that I think Nick and Kristen sort of echoed at certain points, that knocked me a little bit back to a 2. If that even
you were the
matters.
Swing vote? You were the Kevin Costner in this one?
I mean, I don't think there wasn't a consensus. We were just sort of going by the end of the conversation. There were things where I was like, oh, I could see how that could be taken wrong.
Okay.
If that makes sense. But that doesn't take away from anything that Jacob's saying about sort of the feeling of familiarity and the feeling of like being with two good friends that are like experiencing like a life-changing moment and just having fun with one another. Like the chemistry between the two leads, and between a lot of different characters actually, was just phenomenal. And that's, I mean, obviously the actors, but Olivia Wilde killed it.
You know, again, I haven't seen it, and I hope this isn't sort of a bad comparison, but it really does sound like Superbad.
It is a better film than Superbad.
I love Superbad. I think Superbad is awesome.
Have you watched Superbad lately?
Yes, I watched it.
Does it hold up? I have not.
It really does, because the thing about Superbad is it is a crass comedy that has a really core central conceit about two friends who love each other very deeply.
Yeah.
And that's why it holds up.
This one, I think, and again, it's so hard to judge comedies in a way of like, because again, I have memories of Superbad and Booksmart is fresh in my mind.
Okay.
I would have to watch Superbad again, but initially, I think I actually, and maybe it's just who I've grown into today since Superbad, but I think from what I remember about Superbad, I still think that Booksmart is a more emotionally resonant film.
Not least of which, the lead cast, the lead actress in Booksmart is Jonah Hill's sister, right? Yeah. No, I mean, look, I hope that's not an unfavorable comparison. I haven't seen the film, so I'm excited to check it out.
A lot of people are saying that.
And I will check it out and listen to this podcast that we do, which apparently, according to Joshua, who wrote us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com, is a really, really good podcast about movies.
Are we, Joshua?
Are we, Joshua? Yeah, we are. I listened to a handful of your podcasts, and this is a good step away from CinemaSins.
I am 100% A-OK on board with being the farthest point from CinemaSins.
Excuse me for having that low standard. I'm still new to listening to podcasts. In fact, this is the first time listening to a podcast, I guess except for CinemaSins, list watching and listening to a channel that's relating to reviewing movies. Thank you very much, Joshua.
Thank you. No, CinemaSins, I believe, do they have a podcast too?
They must. Everyone's got a podcast.
Because CinemaSins is that original YouTube thing that is like 109 things wrong with Pocahontas, and you're like, what?
That is always really picky. I believe
reaching and perfunctory, I believe, are the words you're looking for. Yes.
The director of Kong Skull Island, whose name is escaping me right now, had a whole Twitter thread about why CinemaSins is terrible, and I think everyone jumped in on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's nothing wrong with making fun of silly things in movies. I mean, hi, but CinemaSins goes beyond. Basically, CinemaSins, I think, hit with a lot of fun, irreverent videos way back in the day, and then due to making that sweet YouTube money, they just wanted to keep going. And then the further they went, the more it's like it's no longer like a mistake that's in the movie or the plot. It's like calling back to like red grapes are gross, and you're like, what? Like
Right.
what? That's who?
I mean, isn't
shut the
that-
fuck up.
I haven't watched the CinemaSins video in a while. I'm wondering, are we punching down now? Is that what we're doing?
No, they make how many? No, we're not punching down.
All right,
We're
all
like,
right.
check this out. I'm gonna go to their friggin' YouTube page right now.
Ooh,
Let's
I've
see how
struck-
much we're
I've-
punching
I've,
down.
I've struck a nerve here. Punching down doesn't necessarily mean punching.
Yeah. They have 8.4 million subs. Yeah, we can hear it. We hear it going. We are punching so high up.
All right. Thank you very much, Joshua. We also got an email from Angelina. Do you want to read that one out?
Sure. Angelina says, recently started listening to you guys' podcast and found it very relieving to listen to other people talk about movies for an hour instead of making people listen to me talk about movies for an hour.
So I want to say to Angelina, we're glad we can fulfill that role for you.
But you know what?
What?
You know what, Angelina? Just keep talking to people about movies. Don't I keep listening to us, please. But just keep talking. And I don't care if they want to listen or not. You just keep telling them. Because I think that's very important.
Well, it's but you just don't want to be that person at the party, which I think we usually are.
No,
who,
I literally want to. I want to be that person at the party so bad. I am that person at the party.
No, yeah. Don't be like us. This is a quote from As Good as It Gets. Don't be like us. Finally, this is a fun one. Tweet from Baby Dread, who says, after listening to 90 plus episodes, my
Jesus.
current theory is that Shahir brings up Marvel movies more than Matt. I don't think Marvel was brought up during the Booksmart episode once.
Maybe okay. So maybe that's true. However, maybe you trigger me. Maybe when you're in the room, I'll bring up Marvel stuff more.
We had a little back and forth about this. I was like, I'm gonna need some data on this one because my initial thought was like the guy, surely the person who wasn't there for the 6 hours of discussion on the Marvel Cinematic Universe doesn't bring up Marvel as much as the other person. Surely that must be the case. 6 hours of pure content where I was not there.
The wonderful and talented Shalia Evans was in
Yeah,
this.
you can go back. Yeah, another Shah. There you go. You can go back and listen to those wonderful episodes recovering the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe with Matt and Shalia. But Baby Dread kind of countered with this, which I thought was funny, which was it usually comes up like this. Shahir brings up Marvel in order to explain a point to Matt. And I was like, I guess I can see that
Like
happening.
I need it. Like what will make me my attention span click on? Yeah. And I'm like, oh, what about Thor?
Yeah. I wonder. That is quite possibly true. Maybe.
Are you using dad brain to trick me?
Maybe I am. I don't know. Maybe that's our relationship now.
Oh no.
Okay. Well, thank you very much to everyone
Thanks,
who
everyone.
emailed and tweeted us. Again, please reach out to us at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at onlymoviepod. Now
You got a friend in us.
Nice, Randy. Glad to have you on the show.
Got a friend in us.
Yeah. Did you grow up with Toy Story?
I mean, define grow up. When did Toy Story come out?
I think it was 1994.
So I guess, I was what? I was 11?
1995.
I was 13.
Yeah.
Uh,
I was a little bit older, so I was
yeah,
probably
so
16.
I remember seeing Toy Story, and I remember liking Toy Story, and the fact that it was all CG and like computer-generated stuff, I was like, whoa.
Yeah. Famously, it is the first entirely computer-generated film.
It's I'm very glad that it is that, like, that the first one is Toy Story, because it's not only a technical marvel and achievement. That's not me bringing up Marvel, Baby Dread. I'm just saying it's a marvel, like as in it was an amazing thing. But it also has a story that I think it resonated really hard with both children and adults. And I think I was at the point in my life where I was kind of, around 13 or 14 or whatever, you kind of tiptoe around dancing on the knife's edge of sort of understanding both of the points that the film creators were trying to get across. Here's the thing. I had an intense love for Toy Story 1. I had not seen Toy Story 2 until 2 days ago.
Wow.
It just slipped. And
Yeah.
it's funny because it felt like Toy Story 2, like with Zurg and like all that stuff, like that's my jam. Like Skeletor or like that sort of like the villain of a
Have
toy.
you seen Toy Story 3?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'd seen Toy Story 3 in the theater when it came out.
Okay.
But I just had missed 2.
Huh.
And we can get into that a little bit later, but like
Well, it's just that I think again I watched it. I watched them all in the theater, and whenever the conversation comes up of like what are the best trilogies that have ever existed in the history of cinema, Toy Story I think is rightly at the top of that list. It can, you can throw in others, but I think Toy Story as a trilogy, Toy Story 1, 2, and 3 are pretty much a perfect trilogy.
So it brings up, and I'm going to say some opinions that I would love to change, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's something interesting that happens with. I mean, we've talked about nostalgia before, and I don't know if this kind of fits in that, because Toy Story 1 I've seen recently as well, and I really have an emotional connection to it on both I am familiar with this from my past, and also this is an incredibly well-told story about having to change and grow up and share and realize that while you are special, you are not the only special thing. Like, there's a lot of messages.
Yeah.
Toy Story 2, because I had no grounding in seeing it originally or like whatever, did not land for me.
Okay.
I did not dislike my time watching Toy Story 2.
Did you watch it? So you didn't rewatch Toy Story 1?
No.
Okay. Because I wonder if you the thing
I've
about
seen Toy Story 1 probably like 50 times. Like I know Toy Story 1 pretty well.
I guess the thing for me is how effectively Toy Story 2 expands upon the world built on Toy Story 1.
So the world is expanded, sure, but the I was having a hard time figuring out what the message of Toy Story 2 was.
Mm-hmm.
Toy Story 3, it's pretty clear about sort of like life changes, you need to grow up / move on, and you can't like grip onto the old things because it'll basically drag you down into a fiery pit of trash hell. God, that scene. When that happened in the theater in Toy Story 3, I was like, how did we get here?
Right.
I was on board. It's just it was a moment. But Toy Story 2
to me was about the value of true friendship.
Yeah, but wasn't the first one about that too?
To me, the first one is about the idea that you may new items, new life might come into your life. Buzz essentially crash lands into Woody's perfect existence, and Woody has to adapt to the idea that he is no longer the Andy's number one doll. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Toy Story 1 has a kind of simple elegance to the whole thing, and Toy Story 2 suggests that what's important there is your true friendship, and it is also reflective of a point in Andy's life. The thing about the entire Toy Story trilogy to me is that they've grown up with Andy.
Well, that's the thing, and now with 4, it's odd.
And it reflects upon like us growing up with these films as well. So Toy Story 3 is about Andy's off to college kind of thing, and it is about the abandoning of like the eventual abandonment of childish things, but it's also like this beautiful, touching look at what those like what those points in our lives meant to us. And I think that, to me, that's been why Toy Story is such a perfect trilogy.
Sure, it's just Toy Story 2. I can't like I can tell you the emotionally resonant moments of these sort of topics that we're talking about in 1, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
2, I can't, and I'm wondering if it's because I saw it so late and out of order. But like, I'm not saying it's a bad film by any means of the imagination. I was engaged and whatever, but like, I don't know. There was just something I was like, this feels like a lot of retread.
Huh.
And it's funny. Someone mentioned something like this, and I'll sort of paraphrase it. There's a lot of messages in all the different Toy Stories, but you can kind of take it as like Toy Story 1 is the reminder that like, it's sort of like when initially you could look at it like when a child, even though this doesn't happen, first goes to school. It happens in 4, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like, oh, you realize that you've been in this bubble and you've been the special one forever. But then there's other people, and you have to realize that, oh, like growing up means accepting changing of consequences and realizing that you might not be the center of a universe, right? In this case, it's Andy's universe.
Right.
The second one is sort of harping down on the same thing where it's like, hey, there's trials and tribulations as you grow up. The third one is, hey, growing up is hard and you're going to feel abandoned, but you have to do it. And the fourth one is, get out of your mom's basement.
Right.
Like, it's like the makers of Toy Story are just slowly telling all of us who grew up with it, being like, hey, by the way, are you grown up yet?
I guess I think that Toy Story 2 is the most about family. and the importance of your family. And that's, like
The toys as family?
Yeah, the toys as family. That's what really, in the first one, it's, like you're kind of established, but in the second one, they have to rescue Woody and they have to come together to rescue Woody.
And then there's the sort of decision, you know what it might be?
What might it be?
So there's the interesting turn when Woody decides to stay with
With the collector?
with Jesse and the prospector and the collector guy because they're a full set, and
Yeah.
it makes them feel like that's sort of like that. You could look at Toy Story 2 from a perspective of almost like blood family versus families, like friend families, right?
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
sometimes one works out better than the other or whatever.
Yeah.
There's an interesting message there. But so since I saw 3 before 2, I got all of the like, we are a family, we need to stick together through trials and tribulations and make sure we are all okay.
Yeah.
I got that full on no stop on 3.
My thing there is I think that's established in
So
2.
here we go. Maybe because I did watch them out of order, I felt like 2 was redundant to 3, which is an unfair read of 2, because 2 can't help that I watched 3 before 2, and 2 wasn't made before 3 was made.
Yeah.
So
okay.
if that math checks out, that might be why I didn't connect with 2 as much.
Then the second thing for me is that so I saw 1 and 2 with my regular friends who wherever I was at that point in my life.
But then you saw 3 with your sham friends.
I saw 3 right before I moved to the United States with my best friend back in New Zealand. Shout out to Luke. And
What up, Luke?
and I have to say it was one of the most profoundly sad and beautiful experiences I think I've ever had at the movies, because I mean, I don't want to speak for Luke, but it was sad that we were like basically parting ways at this point. And the movie, has that incredible moment where they're like, where these toys are basically about to be incinerated. And then, the movie is essentially about parting ways with Andy.
Yeah.
And I
Grow up.
and the thing was like Luke has been my best, like one of my best friends, since I moved to New Zealand. Like
Yeah.
it's always, since I've moved to a place. And so I've known Luke for, some, more than 20 years or something like that. And it was this beautiful thing where we were realizing that we were going to go our separate ways, but we would always be there for each other, And it was and we were sitting in Toy Story 3. It was literally the day before I left. It was the last thing I was going to do. Like the planning of leaving an entire, a whole country and migrating to another country is a very complicated process. There's lots of packing. There's lots of, things that need to be done. And it was like, to me, the thing that I was putting off the whole time was the last time I was going to hang out with Luke. And we did it by...
did it to Toy Story.
We went to the movies because that's kind of what our thing was. I think I mentioned him on the show before. We would go to like midnight screenings of anything. And this was like the last thing we did before we left, and it was just this. I just remember like the having to conceal the hard sobs that I was doing.
Oh, just let it out.
In that movie, and it was the movie was wonderful, but it was also because I was like there with my best friend, kind of like thinking about how we were kind of splitting ways. So, and then to me, bringing it back to Toy Story 4 is what I loved about it was this kind of introducing my son to it. And like having this moment now with my son who was kind of experiencing this for the first time.
And
so
you know what's interesting too about that aspect of Toy Story 4. And it's Toy Story as a franchise's relationship to its audience.
Right.
At first, when they announced Toy Story 4, I was like,
Ooh, yeah.
I was like, what? Like 3 was a pretty definitive ending.
Yeah.
I was like, come on. Like, I was like, Pixar is not a company that I normally think about like, oh, they have to go back to the watering hole like this.
Well, they definitely have.
Of course they have, but like they don't, it never felt like it needed to. And this felt like a little bit, at least the announcement felt a bit like a cash grab because I thought the end of 3 was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But then A, after seeing 4, and B, after hearing, you and a couple other of my friends that have children sort of talk about this, like exactly what you said in the beginning. Like, here's a thing I watched when I was a kid, and now I'm bringing my kid to watch it. And the interesting part about it is, you can still have, I would still consider Toy Story a trilogy, and then this is like, now I'm going to bring up Marvel. Toy Story 1 through 3 is phase 1. this is sort of phase 2 of what Toy Story is and it's generational phasing.
Take that, baby Dred.
Yeah. So, like, for instance, like when is it Molly is the new kid?
Yeah. No. Gabby.
No, Gabby's the baby,
sorry,
the toy.
Bonnie.
Bonnie.
What am I?
Bonnie is the kid that will have these toys for the new generation. Like, the new generation won't really care about Andy. No one really cared about Andy, but Andy was a surrogate for us.
The collector in Toy Story 2 might disagree.
But, like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's Andy was supposed to be the audience.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, Andy.
Yeah.
I was thinking.
No,
of
not Woody.
Yeah,
No.
Woody.
Now, Bonnie is the surrogate for at least children watching this program.
I disagree. You want to know what I think has happened with Toy Story 4? Now, I have the exact same reaction to you. I was like, I don't think I need a Toy Story 4. You know, there's absolutely no reason to go back to this well. You better have a really amazing reason to go back to this well. And so we've kind of established Toy Story 1 is about, childhood. Toy Story 2 is about ensuring that your family is important. Toy Story 3 is about, the fact that you will need to grow up and growing up is hard. To me, Toy Story 4 is about parenthood and the empty nest syndrome, which is why Bonnie isn't as important. Toy Story 4 to me is absolutely about Woody, and it's about Woody having a lack of identity now that he is no longer the key figure in Andy's life. He's not the key figure in Bonnie's life anymore.
No. This is my point. This is my point. I think this is why I think the Toy Story films work as well as they do. That is entirely true, but that's not what your son is taking away from that movie.
No, that's not what my son is taking away. Now
we can take that away from the movie, and it works on that sort of dual level that they all do.
Yeah,
but I think if Toy Story continues, and again, I'm not saying that Andy or Bonnie are like important characters, but they are just sort of the shells in which that we kind of are not viewing from, but like there's a bit.
I agree with that, but I guess maybe me coming as a viewer, and this can be different, and this is obviously different from my son, but I don't think my son watching the film, as he kind of testifies in his little review,
of course,
is looking at Bonnie as a cipher for his experience.
But I'm not saying, and maybe it might be the wrong words I'm using, because again, I never thought of like myself as Andy, but like I'm saying, like it's the. Let me rephrase. The journeys, the type of topics that are being told in these films mirror the type of topics in their adultness of Andy for the first 3 as these movies move on.
Yeah,
it's a mirror of growing up.
Yeah.
I think they're going to kind of start if there's a 5 and a 6, right?
Which I kind of hope not.
I hope not too, but I mean, I enjoyed this one, so like, cool.
Yeah.
I'm saying that like as and I don't know how many times you go back to this well, but like, I like the fact that here's where I'll sort of bring it back. I like the fact that it's a new kid because I feel like new kids. Like, this is the perfect spot. Maybe I'm even metaing now. This is a perfect spot to bring new kids into this thing.
Sure.
They can go through that journey again while still giving adults things to think about.
I absolutely agree that there's a generational element to this, and they've kind of with the closing out of Toy Story 3, there was clearly an end of the generation.
Passing a torch.
But I think, and this is, I guess it's taken us a little bit to get here, but this is kind of our first thoughts on the film.
Sure.
The reason why I think Toy Story 4 works, despite me feeling ultimately it's almost a little unnecessary but successful.
I mean, I would say it's totally unnecessary, but a lot of things are unnecessary that I really enjoy.
What I mean by that is I could happily have lived without having seen this movie, but that is not to say that the movie is in any way unsuccessful at what it's trying to do.
Sure.
It is opening a new chapter that I was surprised that it did, and I think it does it with a kind of level of sophistication that I was sort of unexpecting. I guess in many ways it's not quite Fury Road, but it's this, like nobody was expecting a Fury Road, a Mad Max Fury Road, but we came back to a 4th installment, and it did open up the world in ways that we were not expecting. And I think Toy Story 4 does that. Not quite as not quite as like sort of profoundly as Mad Max Fury Road.
Not as shiny and chrome.
But I think the thing here is that Toy Story 4 really smartly picks the notion that this is not about Barney. It's not about trying to get other toys back. It is kind of much more philosophically aligned with a kind of, in my mind, a somewhat existentialist dread that parents have. You know, like to me, Woody takes on the role as a parent at the beginning of the film.
To Forky? Yeah.
To Forky, and he's, you know, he's got all the hallmarks of like parent. You know, he's exhausted. Forky's trying to kill himself constantly, which is pretty much how you raise, you know, what it's like to raise a baby. And the film becomes this notion about finding your space in the world once you realize you are no longer the most important thing in your life anymore. And that, to me, when I became a parent, that is the real hump you have to get over, is you realize it's weird to phrase it in this way, but you no longer matter.
Sure. I mean,
you only matter in so much as you are creating a kind of I guess a runway for your child.
Sure. I mean, that kind of is Toy Story 1.
How is that Toy Story 1?
Because Woody, it's a different stage in Woody's life, but it's kind of the same lesson. The lesson of Toy Story 1 is Woody's not the only special thing, and he needs to make room for other people to be involved in people's lives.
I think the thing
this is different because it's literally like the end of that road, and like Woody has slowly learned this lesson, and now, like you're saying, the sort of parent analogy, he's so beyond needed. Like he was still needed in Toy Story 1.
My thing in Toy Story 1 is I think that is about you're not the only special one, but you're still special. Is you know, like him and Andy in the film, kind of him and Buzz in the film as equal co-partners in that relationship. So I don't think it's about,
but it's the natural. So between 1 and 4, it's the natural progression of this idea of, because when you're a baby kid.
Can I just introduce one? I think for me the analogy that works better for Toy Story 1 is it's the moment at which you realize you might have a new sibling.
Sure, but that falls into this as well. If we're talking about just Woody's journey, right? He's gone from being like, and this I think is very akin to how I remember childhood and I can't speak for having a child, but then I'll tag you in.
Yeah.
The beginning, Toy Story 1 is Woody being the most special thing in the entirety of his world.
Yeah.
And then realizing that, oh shit, the world is bigger than me, and there are things that make it, I'm not that special. I'm still important, but I'm not the most important.
Yeah.
And throughout these things, not that it's been the major thread, that has sort of come up to Toy Story 4, where it's literally kind of the postpartum thing you brought up, where it's like, oh, like this is the extreme natural conclusion of this.
Yeah.
Not only has Woody did his job.
Yeah.
Andy is in college.
Yeah.
Now Woody was originally trying to relive sort of his glory days with Bonnie, which I've been guilty of trying to relive glory days of me growing up, trying to be young and sort of all that jazz. And then it's a bit of an Arrested Development thing, even though he's kind of just like left to his devices. Then he gets purpose again with Forky, sort of basically doing the newborn thing of like making sure Forky doesn't kill himself.
Yeah.
But he's doing it for Bonnie because he still wants to feel relevant in Bonnie's life, and this is the only way that he has seen at this point to do it. And then now we're getting into spoilers, so we're going to continue more and more and more. The eventualness of Woody's journey is realizing that like it's not like he should be done.
Yeah.
He's like he did his job beyond what he should have done in a good way.
Yeah.
And like he can now, like, even though it's hard, he needs to move on with his life and figure out basically who he is without an Andy or a Bonnie.
Yeah, and I think the beautiful thing here is the turn in Gabby's character. Which allows Woody to kind of find his new place in the world, which is to say that he you know, Woody has always been Woody is funny because he not only shares a name with one of the most neurotic character / director actors in the film and television world, Woody Allen, but he has that sort of, Woody is always a kind of almost on the nerve of on the edge of a nervous breakdown, like he's almost kind of falling apart at any moment. He's the guy who's kind of like, come on, we got to go do this thing, like it's not about that, like he's that character. And 4 to me is kind of...
Is that a Woody Allen character?
I mean, if you've watched any Woody Allen movie...
I just don't like Woody Allen.
We'll
talk about it.
listen to another episode of ours called Separating Art from the Artist. I think Woody is this, he is this really fascinating character because he is the one that has tasked himself with trying to hold together this family, and it's kind of amazing that he's managed to do it thus far. Like the like he's got some remorse, obviously, which is the opening of the film where they lose Bo Peep. That he wasn't able to kind of keep everyone together, but he's worked really hard to keep the entire family together. And he's the linchpin of this, of like Andy's toys. And the end of this film is kind of him realizing that he doesn't need to do that anymore. He literally passes the badge on to another kid, to Jesse.
Yeah.
And is assured by Buzz that we'll be okay now. And so I think that is this sort of wonderful transition, and I think it's the clever thing that Pixar is been able to do with this series. And it, look, we should take a little side detour here. It's like, in terms of Pixar movies, where does Toy Story rank amongst the Pixars for you?
I mean, still probably the first one, and 3 really, very high up. I mean, it's funny because I often forget Pixar movies have an interesting place in my brain's lexicon, right? Because the when I think Pixar, the first thing I think, even though it's not my favorite, is WALL-E.
Yeah.
I like WALL-E a lot.
Yeah.
But I've probably only seen WALL-E like 3 times, but that is my go-to, like, oh, Pixar, WALL-E. And I'm like, what?
Mm-hmm.
I think Toy Story is definitely up there. What's interesting? I actually like the first Cars quite a bit. I don't.
That is my least favorite movie.
I don't. Again, I don't think it has the most to say by any means the imagination. I think, what I think it was?
Yeah.
I had such low expectations for Cars that when I walked out of it, I was like, oh, all right, they did it. And I kind of was like, yay.
Well, I think the thing about Pixar as a studio is that, they've kind of continued the Disney tradition of making the invisible and the unseen have a life, right? Like Disney's kind of, with Dumbo, with Bambi, with The Lion King, the world of things that we have not seen, animating them to life. For me, the most successful ones tend to have not been franchised.
Yeah, Inside Out.
Inside Out is, I think Inside Out to me is the best film they've ever made.
Also, Brave is fucking good.
I wasn't really that
Brave a lot.
too clued into Brave. I've only seen it the one time, but Inside Out, Ratatouille, and Finding Nemo are the kind of 3 for me that make up, I think, the best of what Pixar does.
What's interesting? Up, right?
Yeah.
I think that the first half of Up is legit masterful. I get bored to shit in the second half of Up.
I have the exact same reaction. And it's weird because I would have thought that would not have been true for you, because the second half of Up gets into like Star Wars territory for me.
Yeah, but that's not what Up is. That's not what's emotionally resonant to me.
I can tell you
Up.
the exact breaking point for me at Up.
Which one?
In Up, when they land.
Spoilers for Up.
Yeah, when the house lands on the waterfall that he was kind of aiming for after like going through the storm, I'm kind of like, wait, what? Like, how did this movie kind of, and it transforms itself into kind of fantasy land at that point.
Because then dogs are fighting,
dog talking, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I think the reason I wanted to bring, where does this stand in the sort of pantheon of Pixar movies is Pixar has like found this way to make the unseen and the invisible visible, and they've told stories that ultimately relate to our lives, really clearly. And they do that thing that the greatest episodes of The Simpsons ever did, the greatest episode of The Flintstones ever did, which is that they talk to both audiences at the same time.
Oh, I thought you were going to say they smoke cigarettes.
In Flintstones,
they used to advertise. So I was just making a joke.
Okay. But the idea that the films are simultaneously talking to 2 different audiences,
yes,
which is really remarkable. And I think the reason why I grew up with Toy Story 3, the Toy Story franchise, is that they spoke to me at the exact right moments of my life. And I can see how if you watch them out of order, I don't think my son's going to have the same experience with that. But I can see how. To me, Toy Story 4 was the perfect film that I didn't ask for, that worked okay. I do think, ultimately, I think it's the perfection of the 1, 2, 3 is kind of I would have loved it if that had just been like etched in stone, but that's just me being somewhat of a Luddite, probably.
Well, no, I think human nature and the way our psychology is built, weirdly enough, numerology does play a part in a lot of things. I mean, like there's multiple things even in our industry, like rule of threes, the quadrants of the frame, that sort of thing. Like we do things. Three has a comfortable meaning when discussing things that we are a part of. There's a lot of three things.
It's not so much that, it's just that I thought that 3 was the perfect ending.
Well, there's that too.
Like it was as part of a 3-act
There's
structure.
that too.
It was kind of like a perfect beginning to end. But
we have come. I'm agreeing with that.
Yeah.
But we have also come to the point in a culture where we're like, oh yeah, things are trilogies.
Yeah.
And when it goes under that or over that, for whatever reason, at least for me and for a lot of people I've discussed this with, it feels weird.
Yeah.
Like Toy Story 4 feels weird that it exists. Now,
it's like the Forky of movies.
it's
right?
literally the Forky of
movies.
But again, I think it was done masterfully. Obviously, the CGI is phenomenal. The voice acting is top notch. I was listening to an interview with Tom Hanks, and I didn't realize this. So they go in and they record for like maybe 2 or 3 weeks, like 3 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
And then they come back every 5 or 6 months and do 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah. Just
so
to tweak things and
yeah,
to
they
change.
do it back. So like when they start, he was like, the movie doesn't have the exact same plot as it did when he didn't even know the full plot until like it was going. So I find that very interesting, especially from an actor's perspective. He was talking about like, and then I went and saw the movie and I was floored.
Right.
Like more so than any other, he said, like more so than any other film that he's been in that he then watched, because he's so far away from the process. It was like what he was watching, not a performance from him, but like something that he was surprised by.
I think that's, like if you've watched any of the Pixar documentaries about how they work, that's one of the things that has always been interesting. Pixar is obviously now part of the Disney family, but they had engineered themselves. It came out of John Lasseter's work, and I'm going to talk about John Lasseter very specifically in a second, because obviously his role in this is problematic. If we're to borrow a phrase from your favorite, problematic,
or just life.
How do you mean?
There's lots of problematic things in life.
Yeah.
But great podcast. There was no slight to your favorite's problematic. I'm just saying things were problematic before they brought them up.
Yeah. But I think they had this sort of almost. They have this engineering approach to filmmaking, which I think is kind of beautiful, which is that, like not only is there a technical development of everything that they're doing that goes through like a very a heavy developed process, but they also apply that to storytelling. And they have like this, if you've ever watched any of the documentaries, they talk about how they write. And it speaks directly to what Tom Hanks was talking about, which is that they engineer the stories very methodically throughout the entire writing process. They have this sort of fun pipeline at Pixar now, which is the short film pipeline that they have, which is that they allow their staff to kind of create short films.
No short in front of this one.
No short in front of this one, but they allow their staff to kind of create films in the hope of developing their talents as writers first, and then they still workshop those shorts in the same way that they workshop those features, hoping to kind of bring their people up through the process from short to feature. I think Josh Cooley, who directed this, also directed one of their shorts, which was
it Paper?
I
like Paper.
It was Riley's First Date, so he did the shorts for Inside Out. I think like that is a really beautiful process for a studio, and if you've seen how they engineer stories, like they do work through story turns quite well. And I think that's always been a kind of a remarkable thing about every Pixar movie, is that they've never felt like technology for technology's sake. They've worked as hard on story narrative turns as hard as they have on the engineering, and I think that's why, as much as I had apprehension about Toy Story 4, you should never discount Pixar's ability to find the meaning within this. And to make things feel necessary and urgent. And that's kind of this remarkable thing about Toy Story 4. So coming back to Toy Story 4, to me, the natural transition is that, as soon as he was taking care of Forky, I kind of started getting what this film was about, which is that it is about that sort of stage of parenthood that we all kind of, that anxiety around parenthood that we always have. Which is like, what is my place in the world?
Sure.
I think it also brings up this sort of interesting. There's been a lot of conversation about the existentialist questions of the Toy Story universe unto itself. Like at what point does a toy embody consciousness? How does that consciousness work around?
I'm glad they don't really dive into it too much.
There's a lot of think pieces about that. My thing is, the more you do that, the more the threads pull apart, and
because it's not about that.
And the less that's interesting to me. If I'm thinking about the projection of these films from this point forward, going forward, it seems like that's the only place you can go now. You know, like at some point we have to have a story where toys are interacting with humans, and I'm not interested in that.
No.
Story.
In fact, that's great restraint from everyone's part. Not
yeah,
actually having that
to
happen.
not have that happen, and I feel like. I mean, that's what I think, but I am not a Toy Story Imagineer, so to speak. You know what I mean?
But like, look, if I was going to look at something to put a death, like the final coffin in a Toy Story franchise, that would be like the last well to run dry. Pixar has proven time and time again that they have a lot of brain power and a lot of storytelling ability. So I think they are conscious of the fact that they know that's not why, like. And here's something where I'll take a little dig at my boy John Wick, right? Like the films as they've gone have revealed more and more about how the world works.
Yeah.
And the more you kind of do that, if your story is not specifically about that, oftentimes like John Wick 3, even though I loved John Wick 3, the mystique and the sort of like almost like what's the word I'm looking for? Just the value of the mystery or the value of the world you're presented with will diminish, because no matter what, if you say, oh, by the way, the smoke monster on Lost was actually a dinosaur, some people will be super pumped about that, and some people will be like, what the fuck? Like, if you answer a question, you will divide your audience. And especially if it's a question that your story is not based around.
Right. It's the J.J. Abrams what is
mystery
it?
Box.
Mystery box kind of thing, which I think is like led us into this odd paradigm.
Well, he answers it though. That's the problem.
Well, yeah, we've got into this odd paradigm about the mystery box because of how popular that was, and I think the thing that's sort of been interesting is the more you open the box, the less interesting the box becomes to you. And I think it points to this sort of maybe we've talked about this all along this entire podcast journey, not this episode, but our entire series, is that the power of movies is their ability to imbue the audience with the capacity to fill the void. So like movies aren't necessarily. A friend of mine, and I believe he was borrowing this quote from somebody else, I'm not too sure, said something along the lines of screenwriting isn't about the words on the page, it's about the gaps between the words. And that's what and I always thought that was a beautiful analogy. That's basically the idea that screenwriting is about the space you give the audience to kind of fill it with their own imagination. And I always thought that was a really beautiful sentiment to how movies actually work, which is that it is about the space that the audience can kind of come to the movie. And I think, the powerful thing about Toy Story at this point is that they haven't opened that one mystery box that has been left behind, which is how does this world work? Like, how do toys exist in this world? I don't think we've ever had. It's not quite fourth wall breaking, but we've never had that moment where a toy has interacted with a human being. Am I forgetting that from Toy Story 2?
No, they haven't. It wasn't.
Yeah.
I always liked to look at it as they actually, and this is I would love this if this were the truth. And again, if they answered it, I'm sure people would hate this idea. I always like the idea that toys physically cannot move or interact when a human is looking at them. When something with another consciousness is looking
it's like
at
the Eye of Sauron. You fall
like,
down,
but like physically, like they couldn't interact with humans if they wanted to.
Yeah, it seems it's
perception.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a in this particular film, I feel so bad for that dad
he got screwed.
Yeah, who's basically like having his life entirely ruined by his children's toys, which I think is kind of
par for the course.
Yeah, well, it's kind of there's another movie in the theaters right now, Child's Play, which is probably doing the same thing, but as a horror movie, which I think is what that what if you start opening up that world in that way, it's like, oh, it could be a horror movie. I don't need any more Toy Stories in my life.
No,
I really don't. But I think as a film, this does a remarkable job of finding the narrative within these characters' lives that makes it relevant to us as an audience. It entirely works.
Also, I want to give just a shout out to Annie Potts, who did Bo Peep.
Yeah.
Because holy hell did she just destroy. Like, everyone in this cast did good voice work. There's no question.
Mm-hmm.
But like, she took a character, and Pixar did this too, that was kind of a bit of a throwaway from one, so much so that she wasn't No, she was in 2. She wasn't in 3.
Yeah, she wasn't in 3.
So they had to do a little bit of a retcon scene, which, side note, oh my God, yes, Pixar, we get you can render rain. Like, we understand it's photorealistic now. No, that was beautiful. But Bo Peep, like, was the most engaging character for me because she was this gateway to what I would consider adulthood, right? She was totally fine with where she was, who she was. She had already done the journey.
Yeah.
And granted, that did not mean that she was cold or didn't, like, sort of couldn't relate to Woody or some of the other toys who really wanted owners because she remembered Andy's sister fondly and like was like, oh man, like, and there's a couple moments where you kind of see her like looking like sort of wistfully about it, but then not even in like a get that out of my head sort of way, just like a she
has no regret about it, and
No.
she's the most aware character. You know, that's the thing. Woody has always not quite been aware. He is the most resistant to change.
Yeah.
He has the most inertia in this world. You know, like he doesn't want Buzz to kind of usurp him. He doesn't want to like leave Andy's family, but then he kind of sees this new world, and he doesn't want the family to split apart.
Yeah.
And in this case, he doesn't want to leave like his place now is, he is beholden to the idea that he must serve a child. Like he is beholden to the idea that he must always be at service to a child. That's what their role is. That's what toys are supposed to do. And at the end of Toy Story 4, which I think is kind of remarkable, is Bo kind of teaches him that he can still do that, but he doesn't have to be beholden to a single child. He can still go out and explore the world. She says to him, who needs a child's bedroom when you can have all of this? And in that world, he still is able to help, through Gabby, that little lost child at the fair. Like he gives up his voice box so that Gabby can kind of do that thing. He's not fighting against the past or anything like that. He's finding his own voice. And I think that's really. It's the unexpected route because the cheap writer in me would have the moment where toys and humans are interacting, but that's not what that's me being a terrible writer.
It is funny the Key and Peele moments, like there's those fantasy moments the toys have about interacting with the child. They keep renaming a plan, but it's literally just them pummeling an old woman for no reason to get a key. But that doesn't happen.
Isn't that wonderful how they make that the fantasy because they know that ultimately if that happened, that would break the world.
Yeah.
And they never break the world. I think that's really extraordinary storytelling from these films. Again, I at the end of it, there was a part of me that just said, okay, good. Let's be done with this now. Let's move on. Like Pete Docter, who directed Inside Out, has a film coming out next year called Soul, which again, what he did with Inside Out, I think is so extraordinary that I'm on board for whatever. Maybe that's the extension of the Toy Story universe. They're trying to figure out what the origin of the soul is. But I think if anyone could do it, it's Pixar.
So speaking of Pixar has a film I saw a trailer for. I don't know if you did, called Onward.
I had to watch the trailers in this one as my.
Yeah, you can't really ignore it.
I couldn't put my headphones on. I can't ignore my son.
So this Onward, I just kind of wanted to bring up just very briefly because it looks like Bright, but with a soul.
I don't know what to make of that movie just yet. I'm not excited at this point. If that's,
I don't know why I love this. I love the trope of like young burnout kid in a van takes his other like well-to-do kid friend on a road trip, and this one takes place in the world of fantasy if it just evolved like a standardized world, much like Bright sort of tried to do.
Yeah.
And this just felt really, really nice. I was hoping that I hope it's good. I don't know. I just
any negatives for the film? The only one for me, which is a really odd one, is that but I actually don't think this is a problem at all, is that I think every voice actor in the film brings such a sort of dynamic performance. So Duke Kaboom to me was kind of one note. But he's only in the film for a very short period of time.
He comes in like Act 3.
Yeah, he comes in Act 3, and I think Keanu has just got that ability to kind of he's got that amazing ability to like power through the things that he might not be the best at, but make them so uniquely his. And that's, Duke Kaboom is that character, which is like, I could see a different voice actor kind of doing that and giving it a kind of three-dimensional life, but he keeps it kind of almost two-dimensional, and it works beautifully.
Well, because Duke Kaboom is two-dimensional. He has one problem that he has to work through, which is getting over the fact that he let his child Rouen
Bijou
down.
I'm not the commercial.
Yeah. Like, and then he proves himself in a moment of heroism, and
Yeah.
like that's it. Like, it's a very compact story that makes sense in the Toy Story universe, and it's a neuroses that a toy would have in this world, because we've sort of seen the problems that they have. Like, they all want to belong in a weird way, and even the ones like Duke Kaboom was not as well adjusted as obviously Bo Peep was.
Yeah.
He has this one gut thing,
and clearly not as adjusted as Ducky and
Ducky and Rabbit.
Yeah, Ducky and Rabbit.
Right? I think that was right.
Yeah, Ducky and Bunny. Ducky and Bunny. Yeah, no, they're hilarious. That would be my only minor quip about the film, is that I think that could have expanded out, but that's neither here nor there. Like that is not actually a detractor on the film. I think the film operates beautifully, wonderfully. I am so happy that I got to see it with my son. I'm so happy that we got to have this conversation. I don't want any more of these.
Yeah,
unless you're gonna up the stakes from this point.
You know what I liked about this one, and I agree with you 100%. I don't need any more Toy Story. I like that this did what some of the best seasons of Game of Thrones did. This series as 4 films.
Yeah.
3 was the ultimate climax, and then the 4 is kind of like a touching personal story that is smaller, that does tie up loose ends and gets at least one particular character exactly where they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones did that a lot too, and like they had episode 9 was normally like their big set piece thing, and then we saw the aftermath and what happened to the people we cared about. This did that sort of same arc for me, and I appreciate that. I didn't realize how much I would enjoy knowing that with this film. I can't really think of a bad thing. It was funny as hell. Like, little stuff, like when Combat Carl by Carl Weathers
wasn't getting the high five.
Was not getting the high five. Like, that was hilarious. I thought and you know what's great about Toy Story films as well? They're just so fucking clever.
Yeah.
Like, the way Bonnie gets around with her posse, that Bo Peep gets around with her posse, is in a remote control car that is dressed up like a skunk, because people will just move.
Yeah. I the only thing, again, this is that sort of breaking of the world. I was like, why doesn't that skunk have consciousness? Whereas RC did. And there was another toy.
Well, that skunk wasn't a skunk. It was
No. But why did that toy car not have consciousness like RC does at the, RC?
Oh, I took it as because it was like an amalgamation, like broken up pieces.
No, but then in Toy Story 1 there were broken up toys in Sid's house that were reformed as well. I think to me the way that the film answers this without ever having to answer this is the point of consciousness for a toy is when they are loved and when they have their owners. They're like Forky.
Writing the name is a physical aspect of that, but you don't need it.
But it's when they're loved, and like the toys that have no consciousness are toys that have never been loved before. So there was a toy. It was just immediately popped into my head. Was when they were in the sand pit and Woody was trying to get away. He jumps into like a toy pickup truck or something like that, and he kind of kicks it along and like rides off. And I was like, why doesn't that pickup truck not have consciousness, whereas all the other toys in the sand pit have consciousness?
Yeah.
And it was like it got into. I think the wonderful thing about like the mystery box of this film is that you have to fill the void. You kind of have to like answer those questions.
This film doesn't really do mystery box though, because so the mystery box, as I understand,
it's not the J.J. Abrams, but the idea that
it leaves something to the imagination,
the space between the words,
because that's not what the film is about.
Yeah,
like there are bigger things, more poignant and in your face stuff that the film is trying to say, other than like, hey, how do these toys work?
Yeah, and I hope we never get to the point of asking the question, how do these toys work?
Same. Yep. Well, this has been the only podcast about the film Toy Story 4. Shahir, when you are not breaking your cardinal trailer rule only for your son, that's how much you love him, where can folks find you?
People can find me just binging the last 4 years of trailers at my website, www.shahirdaud.com. Actually, I would kind of love to do a trailer episode. I love trailers, but I just don't watch them for the sake of my sanity. Matt, when you are not cracking up, are you the collector? Are you the person who kind of keeps the toys in the box, or
No,
are you the
never was.
No.
I have lost quite a bit of money because I'm like, nah, fuck it. I want this on my shelf,
and I want to play with it.
If I have to, I mean, I literally have a Lego Bastion on my desk. I pick that thing up multiple times a day. So if that thing is alive, then it's doing good.
So, and if it is alive, how would it get to your information?
Oh, well, it can wander about 4 feet to my keyboard and type in MATTHEWKROL.com for my life and works. Also, Skeletor, the number 4, PREZ on Instagram, or Emperor MSK on Twitter. Also, you can check out the good works we're doing over on Extra Credits. I believe by the time this airs, we will be having a very cool episode. I'm even going to spoil it right now, I think. What day is it? What year is it? Oh, yeah. We're going to be doing an episode about how the games industry can stop normalizing some pretty terrible things in the world.
Okay.
So that's going to be coming out soon.
Can you give me a clue as to what those terrible things might be?
Nazis.
Oh, okay.
So
I'm gonna fire up my Call of Duty account.
that's half the problem.
Okay.
Anyway.
But wait, there's been a third person in this room, I think, who's just woken up from nap time.
Oh!
Who's come back in. My son, could you? I want to know just the final thoughts. We haven't had final thoughts here, so maybe you could take it away. I'm gonna just jump back in here and ask a question. Let me just jump over here. And
Master Dowd.
Master Dowd,
Please take us away.
Do you think your friends would like the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah?
And they'll say, okay. They'll say, okay, we'll watch it for you. They'll say, okay, we'll watch it for you. That's the movie. We're done. The podcast is actually done.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh. What about, was there any part that made you happy?
I took off my headphones.
Okay, you're done.